Facilities that make this program possible are provided by the City of Highland Park. Programs are produced independently by members of the community. The City of Highland Park is not affiliated with the following program or the producers of public access programming and is not responsible for the content. The following program does not reflect the opinions of the City of Highland Park.
Hello, and welcome to Cahnmanns Current Events Roundtable. Today I'm going to welcome back a very wonderful guest, Gary Kulik. And Gary, you're now an MBA graduate student, am I correct?
That's correct.
Each time I see you, you graduated, I remember, and got your BA degree or BS degree, or what is it, BA or BS?
Bachelor's of Science.
Bachelor of Science degree. Now you're graduating, getting your MBA degree. And today we have a wonderful topic on political bullying on Facebook and in our relationships. I want to read just a little something from a fellow colleague that had been on my show, Gary Midkiff, and he wrote this, and I'm really in agreement with him, and I really want to read this to our viewers. I am increasingly concerned not only about the inability of many people to talk with those who have a different political perspective, but also the way many of those people justify their antagonism and anger. I have been told that yelling is the only way to make the other side hear. It is literally impossible to think rationally when one is being screamed at or threatened. Do some really believe that this is the path and the best path that is available to others? And then it goes on and says, I ask all of you to think about this, think about your political discussions, think about the methods you have to keep conversations civil and productive. Perhaps if we share ideas with each other, we can awake the gentle art of civil discourse. Isn't that powerful, Gary?
Definitely a very powerful statement, but at the same time quite unsettling because, I know the feeling all too well because I found myself in a similar situation many times before. And I can definitely relate to an extent where I found myself in situations where I haven't been able to talk openly with people. We've had disagreements and it's gone south.
Exactly. And, with you, Gary, it's even more of a challenge because the last show was the challenge of being gay in a heterosexual world. And here, being gay Republican, a Trump supporter, I believe, you've been called an Uncle Tom, you've been called a racist, fascist, Nazi, white supremacist. And it's been very difficult for you. I know you take both values. You have a Christian value and you have a Jewish value because of your parents. One's Christian, one's Jewish. And so you come from both sides of the fence and you know what it is to be picked on all accounts.
Oh, definitely.
And so why do you feel that people... and I've had my own experience, and it happened to me a couple of weeks ago when I voiced my own opinion about something in politics, and three of the people in the car that I was with started screaming at me. They said, how can a smart girl, PhD psychologist, think that way? It was so frustrating that I thought any minute I'm going to have the car stop. It would have been easier for me to walk to the nearest restaurant or gas station from the expressway than to be in the car that's being bullied. And so that was one of my first times that, I've had programs on children being bullied, and this was my first time that I personally experienced being bullied. And this was the first time, but it's happened it's happening again and again. So, and I know for you, it's even worse than the situation that I experienced.
Absolutely. So, I'll definitely start out with, I remember coming out as openly gay, And I don't even remember experiencing half of what I've experienced coming out as an openly gay conservative. I didn't experience bigotry and people name-calling me and people making me feel like it wasn't okay to be who I was or have my opinions be the way that they were about certain things. And ultimately, you know, what led me to coming out as a gay conservative was just being able to formulate my own opinions about certain things that are going on in our country right now, and styles of government. And for me, you know, to me, I haven't changed. I've never been the person to kind of go along with what I call the groupthink. I always kind of veer off and establish my own opinions, and I don't follow the crowd. I do what I think is best, and I don't let people peer pressure me into thinking a certain way. I have the ability to think for myself and make my own decisions. And you know, some people are respectful of those decisions, and thank you to those people who have been very respectful of those ideas and decisions that I've thought about. And you know, there's some people that are just not, and they're not the tolerant people that they proclaim to be. So that is what I've been experiencing these last almost 2 years we're going on now.
And that's interesting because, you know, it's equally difficult. And so many things we're talking about being bullied on Facebook. In fact, I think you and I are on Facebook. We're on Facebook together, and we're also on Facebook. I believe, I don't know if you took them off of your Facebook, but I've had one of our mutual friends has been sending a lot of really bad material. One was with a Time magazine with President Trump on the magazine, and a dog standing right over the dog using the bathroom right on top of the magazine. And the other one I received was with Donald Trump in a Hitler's uniform, and you know, saluting like Hitler did. And I think for Jewish people, I think that is extremely. I mean, it was somebody that used to. Was somebody that I knew that used to come to my house all the time, and now they don't, because I couldn't handle. Every time I saw her, I kept seeing Donald Trump in his Hitler uniform doing the Nazi salute. And it was very, I mean, with all the people that came out of the Holocaust, to see something like that. And I think we're talking at lunch that your grandmother, who came from Poland, you were telling me some stories about her feelings about some of the stuff that went on. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about your grandmother?
Absolutely. So I will say, you know, unfortunately what I've seen is so much of this political propaganda and just such division amongst opinions and people. It's really brought out the worst in a lot of people. And what bothers me the most is, you know, this was supposedly a group of people that were very sensitive to other people's feelings and opinions, yet at the same time they're able to drop the words fascist, Nazi, white supremacists so easily, and they don't even really take into consideration the meaning behind some of those phrases and terms. And so, leading back into what my grandma was saying, you know, I have spoken to my grandmother. This is my father's side of the family. She was not Jewish, however, she did grow up during the Holocaust and experienced firsthand what fascism was, and has shared those stories with me. And after listening to those stories and hearing people, you know, use the word fascism so lightly, the two are not comparable. Two separate things, totally different, and quite rather insulting when you drop that term. Because if you had any idea what fascism was, and you know, for me, I've listened to my grandmother's stories, so I have a little bit of an idea of what living under, you know, a dictatorship or fascism would be. The two are not comparable. They're not. And you know, using the term Nazi, you know, for people that have gone and survived the Holocaust or lived through the Holocaust, died in the Holocaust, had family members that have passed or, you know, perished in the Holocaust, to use that term so insensitively is completely insulting, and it's just terrible. It's just absolutely terrible. it really hits close to home for me
Right.
because I've had, relatives that lived through that. I don't believe I have anyone on my mother's side who is Jewish that perished during the Holocaust, but I've heard the stories. I've been to museums, and you just cannot compare the two. And I really wish people would stop using that term, those terminologies so lightly.
Right,
and insensitively.
Right. Or even racist. If you say one thing about even about President Obama, if you say something that you didn't like something about maybe his health care or something, they'd call you a racist right away. I mean, I mean, it's unreal. I mean, one of my closest friends who really, she was there for me when time was really, really bad many years ago. She happened to be an African-American woman who she and I used to pal around all the time together. She was I haven't seen her in years. She may have been passed away, but because I had moved away and lost touch with her. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be where I am today. And sometimes when I'm called a racist, I think, what are they talking about? Racist? Oh my God. That's the last thing. Just because I disagree with something doesn't mean I'm a racist. And people are being called that every single day of their life if they don't agree with something. And these words are just really, really unsettling. Something that just came out on bullying, and this is from Kanye West, who was recently on the Jimmy Kimmel Show. And those that don't know Kanye West, he's an American songwriter, record producer, and rapper. And he talked about being bullied as a Trump supporter. And he said, "You can't bully me, liberals. Can't bully me, news. Can't bully me, the hip-hop community. Can't bully me. If I'm afraid to be me, I'm no longer ye." And that's a mouthful. And I think, somebody that came out, and I mean, he's being bullied as well, and he's standing up for himself. We were even talking about that Roseanne Barr incident where they got rid of her because of her what happened with her view that she tweeted, I guess in the middle of the night, on Valerie Jarrett. And what did you say about that? And you thought it was an excuse for...
I did hear about that, and I looked into it. I really looked into it closely, and I said, it probably wasn't the smartest remark to make, but to have your entire show, career, contracts canceled immediately as a result of that, I felt like was unnecessary. And it was as if ABC was looking for the smallest thing or just smallest little thing that they could possibly take and use against her and make it so that her show was canceled and she's no longer no longer able to have her voices or opinions heard through her television show, in which in the television show she's an open Trump supporter. And I just felt like they could have, maybe they could have requested that she apologize or something, but to go that far, cancel the whole show and make it so that this woman could no longer have her voice heard seemed to be almost exactly what they had in mind.
So you think it really wasn't about as much as what she said, because she really came out and apologized. I think she's been on several shows all over, from CNN to Fox to MSNBC. She's been all over to apologize, and you feel that was their way to shut her up. It was their excuse to really get rid of her, because Peter Fonda, in his tweet about Barron Trump, saying that they should put him in a cage with pedophiles, and he's still making movies, and he barely apologized for that remark, which to me was so much more traumatizing than the remark that Roseanne Barr made. There's no comparison. He's still making movies. He's still being on different television shows. No one is doing that to him, and yet Roseanne Barr was completely, as you said, probably the excuse to get rid of her because they didn't like her political views.
Absolutely.
That could be part of it too.
Absolutely. I think it's one-sidedness, hypocrisy at its finest. And in addition to that, she's not the only one that's been censored. We have YouTube, people that have YouTube channels. Diamond and Silk was another one. Tommy Laren, a couple other people on YouTube that have had their videos censored or removed on YouTube. A lot of censorship going on there, and they haven't even said anything that's even that inappropriate. Nothing that I would imagine should be deemed as inappropriate. They are still being silenced and censored.
Oh, I do a lot of research. I run a current events for the Highwood Library, in which I have both Democrats, Republicans, Independents, liberals, and libertarians, I should say. I have to look at a lot of research for and against, pro and con, and I'm having trouble right now finding the pro. If I want something that's pro about a candidate, I'm having difficulty getting it. I'm getting the negative on some of them, but I'm not getting the positive. So and I Google everything, and I try to do a lot of different types of research, and I know some of this stuff is not being brought into, it's not put on Google, and they're getting rid of it. So it's very hard to do research if they're taking a lot of things off that you need on this. It's very challenging. And also, just recently I heard today on one of the morning shows that I was watching that the Academy Awards are losing a lot of viewers because people say they want to listen to the Academy Awards. They want to just enjoy the movies, the films. They want to hear about, that's why they go to the movies or they go to films to get away from politics. And when you listen to the Academy Awards, one right after the other is bashing, let's say, the president, one by one, and nobody wants to hear it anymore. I mean, it's one thing they do it on different, CNN, MSNBC, and a lot of these news stations that they're bashing. I mean, I've never heard anything like this before. I remember when I had somebody in my current events said something very negative about President Obama. I said, wait a minute. You could say what you can about you don't like one of his policies, you disagree with it, but you don't bash the president. That is not acceptable in my current events. You can bash if you want one of the policies. You don't like the health care because it's too high. It's causing a lot of people can't go to their doctors or can't go to the hospitals they want to. That's fine, but don't do that to the president. Be respectful. And I have not seen this happening one by one. I mean, you turn on all these stations. You turn on all the even the type that are comedians, again, Kimmel and a lot of the other stations, that you're watching some of these fun shows, even Saturday Night Live, bash, bash, bash.
That's all I do.
I mean, it's so much hatred going on, and bullying, and people don't realize, bullying in restaurants.
Oh, out of control.
It's really, Jeff Sessions was just, he was taking a picture with a manager in a restaurant just recently, and now the manager of the restaurant and the employees of that restaurant are being bullied because he took a picture with, Jeff Sessions took a picture with a manager. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, her family was asked to leave a restaurant because they didn't like her politics. And another, Kristen Nielsen, people came into the restaurant while she was eating and yelled at her, and because they didn't like her politics. And here, a Democrat from California, Representative Maxine Waters, just said, she was encouraging activists to continue hounding Trump cabinet members whenever and wherever they find them, restaurants, bowling alleys, grocery stores, what have you. Start bullying them. Start making them feel that they need to leave the restaurant and the stores. What do you say about all this that's going on right now?
I say it's outrageous. It's uncalled for. It's outrageous, and it should not be tolerated. And what bothers me the most is the hypocrisy within all of that. You've had incidents where We've had gay couples go into bakeries and request to have their wedding cake be made at a certain specific bakery, and they've been turned away at the door, or not at the door, but they were denied service, and they were so upset about that. And I think it's wrong that maybe it's on the opposite end, but you're essentially inflicting the same discrimination, someone based off of, in that case it was based off of maybe someone's sexual orientation, but in this case it's based off of someone's political preference, so to speak, and are putting people through the same harm and discrimination. It's not okay when you turn away a gay couple and deny them service, but why is it okay when you go and deny Sarah Huckabee, someone who I think is a very respectable woman, deny her service at a restaurant?
With her family.
How, two wrongs don't make a right. Plain and simple.
Yeah, and if a bakery is open for the public, they should be able, if it was a private bakery and somebody was just doing it from their home, that's one thing. But when you're open to the public, you don't deny people, unless you don't know how to make a cake, a wedding cake like this. But it's very hurtful to people.
It is, and the bakery was for religious purposes. But the bottom line is, it's the same principle. It's the same scenario. You're being discriminated against for something that it's unfair, and it's discrimination at its finest.
And denying couples that are gay that they can't adopt. That's another thing, and I think that is wrong in itself too.
I agree.
A nice, respectable couple. Would you rather leave those children in foster homes, orphanages, and instead of denying people that can show a lot of love? One of your grandmothers that I do know happened to, your grandmother. Not the grandmother you were talking about from the Holocaust, but your other grandmother, she was left in orphanages one by one, and she has all kinds of physical problems, emotional problems, that was left in an orphanage for so many years. And here there are couples that want to give the children love and a good home, good schooling, and they're denied.
It's very unfortunate.
So what do you think's happening? What do you feel that for the gay community, how do you feel what's happening for you there?
So for me, I feel like, I was fortunate enough to have some friends that did uphold the whole ideology that they are tolerant, and that it is a tolerant community. But at the same time, I had many other people who I feel, the proper term would be, I felt very ostracized from the LGBT community. And it was very unfortunate. But at the same, on the same note, for many years I had been seeking brotherhood. And the irony is, I found a sense of brotherhood in the last place that I ever thought that I would ever find it, and that was the Republican Party. I've met other gay Trump supporters.
And that's unusual, because why do gay people think that Democrats, that they'll do so much more for them than the Republican Party or the Libertarian Party? Doesn't have to be necessarily just a party.
I think, for a while, the Democrat Party, or what I consider to be classical liberalism, is what was the advocate for, progressive ideas such as marriage equality and the idea of just the LGBT community as a whole. Those are the people, that was the party that was the advocate. And it's changed. It's not what it used to be. To me, I'm still a classical liberal to this day. I believe in people being able to freely express themselves and to be able to belong, have a sense of belonging and be recognized. I'm still a classical liberal to this day, but what I've learned is the progressive movement, the liberal movement, it's changed. It's no longer what it used to be. The Democrat Party has changed, and I see it as something entirely different. And what I've learned is my views are now more towards the Libertarian Party, more towards being a moderate conservative when it comes to certain things, because I don't like what the left has been promoting. I feel like many have actually referred to it as the regressive left, because it's caused people to really almost hate one another, and it's caused so much division in this country. Political correctness culture, I don't think that's helped social progressiveness whatsoever. I think it's helped people actually despise any of those ideas. And that's where, I kind of had this aha moment about 2 years ago when I said, this is really no longer where my views lie, and I need to find a new home. And I found the Republican Party that really welcomed me with open arms. I'll never forget the first time I attended a Republican event, and I went out and I had a shirt custom made that said "Gays for Trump," and I went to this event called the Deplorable. This was when I lived in California. And I showed up with a friend, and I was really nervous because of all the terrible things I've said that and how Republicans feel about gay people. And I showed up, and it was a wonderful evening. I had people coming up to me asking if they could get a photo. You had people of all different ethnicities, and there were other gay people there too. It was mind blowing, and it was when I kind of came to the realization that I found myself a new home, and not only that, I believe in this, and I want to continue being involved. And so, therefore, I became very open on Facebook for two reasons. Just because, I've always been the type of person that's always kind of embraced these things about me, but to also find other people like me. Just like the first time when I came out as an openly gay, I wanted to find other people that were like me. Yes, and the truth is, there are other people like me. There are other gay conservatives. Yes. We're definitely a minority, but we're still out there, and we're not going anywhere. And it's always a pleasure to meet more of them.
And that's why I had you on the show today, because I remember when you did come out, the challenge of being gay in a heterosexual world, and now you came out as a Republican, and see, your views are, you see, people think that it's like everybody's the same. All Democrats are, this way, all Republicans are that way. And I wanted to show the viewers that there's another side. There's always different sides to look at, and it isn't just one side. And I think that, I think people need to hear that and see it, and you're the living example of somebody, and you came out for the people that aren't here today. And we also, came out with about what it is to be bullied, and the part that I read in the beginning of our show, that we don't have to be yelled at, we don't have to be screamed at, we don't have to be mocked, we don't have to be getting these horrible pictures on Facebook that are really disgusting and very hurtful to a lot of people. And you have to remember, there are people out there that were in the Holocaust. They don't have to be seeing people dressed up in Nazi uniforms or political figures in Nazi uniforms. That is so hurtful to so many people that were out there in the Holocaust, and people's grandparents, great-grandparents died so we could have a life that we have today. And Gary, that I'm very happy that you came on the show again. I know you came all the way from, you're living in Vegas right now. Again, come back when you're back in town.
Oh, thank you
for
coming.
Thank you for
having me once again.
And I love your points of view. I mean, and it's really different, and I really appreciate that you can come on Cahnmanns Roundtable. You are always an open guest. You have the floor whenever you want it. And I'm sure the next time you come, you'll have more views on different things.
Absolutely.
And I really respect that you did come on the show. And I hope that people will hear the show and really see that there are different people. There's different people out there, and we can hear you. You don't have to yell at people that are different than you. You don't have to scream at them. Just let them know what your points of view are in a very nice, relaxing voice. We can hear you. We don't have to be yelled at. We don't have to be bullied.